And it's not complete by any means, just sort of an introduction, mostly about things that happened a long time ago that some of the rest of you probably haven't ever had time or opportunity to talk to Mom and Dad about. So we'll start. We're here to celebrate a wedding and a marriage. The wedding, a commitment made on a hot June morning in the little Catholic church 50 years ago, 1933. And the marriage, a day-by-day intertwining of two lives, the growing and spreading of the tree and its branches, are the bonds of love for 33 people. You all got those 33s in there from the beginning, I'm sure. And bonds stretching now from the Pacific to the Atlantic and farther, back to the old world continent, from which the old Inuits came, and down far to the south into an old part of the New World. You all know about the marriage, because we're all living parts of that marriage. But probably some of you don't know about the wedding, and would like to hear something. So I'll get this started and ask Mother and Daddy to correct me on some of the things that might not come out right, and giving some details. But before we get into the wedding, some people probably should hear a little bit about things that went on before. So we're going back to the beginning of this century, back to eastern Nebraska, where a Bohemian family was developing on a farm near David City. In that family, there were 5 boys and 5 girls, but our story is really about the second child, Fred Frank, who was born in 1904. Now, this wasn't an ordinary boy. I want Joel to hear this particularly, so you'll be very impressed. He's over here. This was a boy who could do every kind of farm work there was to do by the time he was 12. And that includes plowing behind a head of 4 horses. That's right, Daddy, isn't it a head of 4 horses on a team, but a head of 4 horses, isn't that what you said? We saw that guy driving the 2 the other day. Grandpa was 12, he hitched up 4 of them all by himself and plowed straight furrows in the fields, from what I hear. Is that not right?
Well, it is exactly correct. Usually use 3 horses on the plow and plow 4 horses on the plow.
Oh, okay. I knew I'd get some of this confused. Okay, this was a boy who had only the opportunity to go to school until 8th grade, and that in a 1-room country school. It was a young man who had rented a farm and done all his own farming, had worked as a door-to-door salesman for a real silk company, taken a correspondence course in salesmanship and another one in real estate, worked on haying crews, got himself a Model T, and eventually came to western Nebraska. All of this by the time he was 22 years old. Pretty good. And that was just the beginning. He liked what he found in a little town called Gearing in the Platte Valley, north Platte Valley. A little town founded about 40 years before. He liked the green fields, peas, and potatoes and corn, so he farmed here and fed cattle and even tried wheat farming. And then, in what year, Daddy, was the M&S Oil Company? 1930, the M&S Oil Company, partly up in Wyoming. This was a family of only 5 children, the oldest being the only daughter. Of course, you know, we're talking about Dessie and Margaret, who was born in the middle of a January blizzard in Mitchell Valley. This wasn't an ordinary little girl either. This was a little girl who started school in walking to the 1st grade, 4.5 miles. How far? Because that's what I wrote down.
I said it's 5.5 of mine.
Okay. I guess I can't even read my own writing without my glasses anyway. And who changed schools and houses how many times before you finished grade school?
Went to 8 schools.
You know how to sing that well, huh, Dad?
Is that the rose that she carried? Did she carry a rose?
No, wait, you gotta go pay. Turn to the side, Mom wants you from the side. Turn back to the center. Towards that way. So she can get your profile right, get the veil.
Alright, we have it as
lovely.
Are you thinner through the hips than she was? Is that right? And the
Talk
train,
about the orange
the train
blossoms.
was actually your veil, right?
Yes.
Turn to the side because it's got you see the orange blossoms. These were the original white orange blossoms
Yeah.
dipped in wax.
Original $7 dress.
Marvelous dress.
$7 dress.
And that was squeezing pretty hard to get that. Fred said I had to have a long veil, and I said I can't.
We won't tell you what
What was a good
you were rich in other ways.
monthly income for you?
I was making $35 a week. I had a terrific income.
35 a week, and that was really
Boy, yeah, because I was getting $75 a month when I started at $30 a month, and I was getting $75 a month at the end of 2 years. And that was one of the better paid girls in town.
All right, we're here on the 14th of July, 1983, celebrating the 50th wedding anniversary of Fred F. and Dessie Margaret Masek,
Which was really on June 27th.
which was really on June 27th, 1983, right? We're here with 6 of the 7 children and lots of their families visiting to celebrate this happy occasion and to remember lots of things about the past, and are here to try to record my mom and dad, to try to pass on to us, to our children, our grandchildren, some things about their lives, the things that were important in their lives, their principles, the things that have made them the great parents that they are, and that have they've been able to give so much to so many children.
Okay. Now, since we're going to be talking in terms of principles, would you like to start with that, or am I putting words in your mouth to start with that in terms of principles?
This is that favorite prayer, and one that brings in a lot of things that are important in our lives, in everybody's life. Prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. I think the longer you live, the more you realize that it is where you give that you receive. Because when you're, as a young person, you have many, many dreams, and you want this and want that. And you only find it in giving to other people, and that comes back to you. In giving to other people is when you grow and become more of a person. I think that one thing I might say to you is that people have always been important in my life. Of course, God is the beginning and the end of all things, but it's through people that he works on this earth and is present on this earth to everybody. And as a child, the people in my life were very, very important to me. And my family has been my whole life since I was married. The children and the grandchildren as they came along have been just all my joy. And there's always sadness. But then it's through the sadness that you realize how to enjoy the good things too. And there's joy in sadness really sometimes, because you can always turn that around. God turns it around, makes good come out of everything that happens to you as long as you love the Lord.
Along a little different line, I would go back to my grandparents and some of the things that I learned from them. And while my grandfather always seemed to be a grouch, behind his grouch there was always a smile. He'd really read the right acts off to grandmother. And, but you could always see a smile while he was doing it. And some of the things that I was very impressed with was that everything you done had to be in an honest way. I don't think that he would ever beat anybody out of one penny. No way, and grandmother either. And she was a very, very good-hearted person, which seems to be a characteristic that they brought from the Bohemia country and was passed on, of course, to my folks. And because my dad was the same way very much, in fact, he was so good-hearted that he broke most of the time because he would do all the plowshares for the neighbors who were poor. We were poor too, but then every rainy day we would be turning the forge there, and he would be hammering out plowshares and so forth, never charged the neighbors anything for it. And my mother, of course, was also too good-hearted for their own good a lot of the time. But some of the things that I think I learned young was do everything in moderation. For instance, drinks, smoking, anything like that. Everything, there was no real harm in drinking in moderation. And from that, I would say that just practically the whole family grew up taking a drink, but at least in my case, and I know in quite a lot of the other members, that nobody ever got drunk. Which, as you kids probably know, all through the years, that you never did see me drunk. Nobody else did. So I think that was a big lesson. In leaving home, and even before that, one thing we learned to do was that we worked. We worked hard. I don't think it ever hurt us. If it had, we wouldn't be here anymore, I guess. But we worked hard, tried to be fair with people, and when I came to this country, I had every opportunity in the world to drop away from the church, certainly, because there were practically no Catholics here, didn't know anybody, and really, if you were going to drop away, that would have been an easy time to have done it. But for some reason, I didn't. I mean, I had the faith to stay in there. And when I met your mother, I think the thing that impressed her was that I think I treated her like a lady.
That you did. Always a gentleman.
Cut it off a while.
Don't cut it off a while. This is precious. That you can cry when you say that is precious.
Anyway, we got along real well together, and I never did try to tell her to join the church. Never asked her to. Did I?
No, really, I think the reason why I came into the church was because when I studied it and found what it was all about, one of the reasons that I could really tease him about was that if anybody lived up to all of those principles in the Catholic Church and all the rules and regulations, it had to be a pretty darn good husband. And any girl needs a good husband, doesn't she? Really, you know, the fact that women are treated as God's people and are given a lot of appreciation and respect. And even St. Paul, the things that he had to say about women being subject to their husbands, also brought in the fact that the husbands had to be very aware of the needs of the wife. And Daddy has been a good provider and always been faithful and true and honest, and that's important.
Well, along the way of the 50 years, certainly there have been some very rough spots. And probably if it hadn't been for the bringing up in the church, there were plenty of times when we might have separated, I would say. A lot of times that we didn't get along perfectly, as you all of you know.
Well, you know what they say. Two people never have an argument. One of them is either a fool or a moron.
Amen, amen.
But you come with two sets of values, two different personalities, and you're the way you are. That's part of our life, is getting along with people and cooperating with each other. And somebody being too domineering is not good for the other one, not good for themselves, because then they fail to grow and expand if they just are set where nothing else can come into their lives.
And I always remember when we were going together, one thing that your mother, I think she tried to keep from me for a while, was that her parents were separated, which I already knew. Thinking that probably that would change our relationship, which of course didn't at all. Because I wasn't keeping company with her mother or her father. But with her. And she was a beautiful person that she has been through the years. Plus a beautiful, not only beautiful in the kind of person she was, but also a pretty person. And as I said, I think all through our courtship that I always treated her like a beautiful lady that she was. And, was very sold on the way she treated me.
Good. You ready for some questions now?
Sure.
Anybody have some right off the top of your head, or want me to start?
Don't run away.
Richie's got the air for Richard.
Good. In about 16 and a half years, it'll be the year 2000. It'll be the turn of the century. Kukui will be, what, 18 years old.
Same as Sandra.
Jason will be 20. Along the lines of Michael, right?
Right.
Okay. Joshua will be 18. Anything that you would, looking ahead to that time, you've been around since 04 and 1914. Anything that you'd pass on to them in particular or not?
Oh boy, what's the world going to be like in the year 2000? Really, we can't see what life is going to be like at that time in one way, and yet in another way, life has always been the same. Go way back to the Old Testament, and your relationship with God and with one another has got to be the basis for everything that you do. And His faithfulness is there forever and ever, always. You see it all through history, and you see it through the 50 years we've been together. Because there, as he said, sometimes things are rough, but He's always there. And with His help, you come through it into whatever age there is, or whatever type of civilization you're living in. It doesn't make any difference. You need that spaces, you need that strong rock to cling to. And you need the faith and the confidence and the trust that everything is going to be all right. And then you need to be grateful, I think. And that's a big thing with me, that if you appreciate and are grateful for what you have, things are not really all that bad a lot of time. You just count your blessings.
So you're talking lots of principles there. Faithfulness and confidence and gratefulness and trust and a sense of religion. That's what you're...
Being patient and waiting for things to
And
work out.
being prepared to meet temptations, which there's plenty of them in the world, always was and always will be. You'll always be grateful for being able to handle them. You can. Everybody can, but they must if they. And when you look back over life, you're glad that you did meet the many temptations that come along. Don't think they won't come along for all of you younger ones and everybody. They do, but then you have to be a strong person, I think. And I think the Creator gives you what it takes to meet these temptations. You got to buckle in there, and you'll be glad you did.
Wow, so they kind of, there's another facet there, and that is that if you do stub your toe and make a mistake, that isn't the end of everything. There's always, God is a forgiving God, and He's waiting for a chance to pick you up again and put you back up on His shoulder. You just ask for the help.
We haven't gotten any questions.
First of all, I want you just to wave and say hi to the future generation. Just lighten up just a little bit.
We love every little one that comes along in this world. They're just, life is so precious. People are so precious. And we'd like to know everyone up.
And when you think about some of the things that I think you said, Grandma, that she started all this, and I think about my folks and my grandparents and so forth, and you look at all these people, it almost seems impossible that the world goes on, and that when 50 years ago, we couldn't have imagined anything like this, could we?
That's why it's so great to see a new baby.
Yep.
Just can't wait to meet him. Can't wait to meet Mary Louise's little one that's on the way and should be here in a couple of months.
I have a question, and that is, I'm just really aware of us sitting in this house that you built, and last night we saw on film the breaking of ground for this house. And this morning we carried stones over to what was the garden, and we see a church standing in what was the cornfield, and we see the place of foundation for a prayer garden, out of the garden that I prayed in when I was longing for Richard. And the question that I have is, what's your vision of what this house should become? Because clearly so much has already happened in it. We've all had a foundation here. And I think of Grandpa's farm and, buildings just kind of falling down and nothing going on in continuity. And I wonder if you have any vision for what the continuity for this house would be in terms of what you started.
Well, I think that you can dig into the future too far. And I think a lot of that left to the future generations. And so what's the difference between me? It's served its purpose.
Just like your butt.
Yeah. What's the difference what happens? Whether somebody buys it or
You don't
whether
have a
the
vision for
church would want to take it over, which I don't think that they do. None of the kids want it. They all live away from here, have homes of their own. And that's not a thought as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about Margaret, but don't worry about it at all.
Those material things are all that important. Something will happen to it or not happen to it, whatever. Everything God created has its purpose in it. As who was it said? St. Paul said, I plant and somebody else has to water and the next generation has to take on. I think Chris is the one that's really ready to take on the world. Grandma and Grandpa don't have to worry anymore because this younger generation, Raphael and Michael and Chris and Philip and on down the line are going to take on whatever the problems are, and that'll Josh and Jason, you know, they have to live in the milieu that is there, and certainly this is a changing time in history. It's a period of lots of change. We're not visionaries. We're just here to live day by day the way God gives us to live.
Something that ties right in with that, though, and with the house and the rest of it, is you have certainly stood for something in your life. Okay? When there were choices to be made, you made those choices based on some principles.
Right or wrong,
Okay? And
natural law, the Ten Commandments, love of neighbor.
twofold then the question is there. First of all, some things you'd like to see this family stand for in the future to carry on what you've stood for 50 years. And then I have another one coming up, or is that way off? I'm fishing too far.
No, I think that too, that ends at a point. We have our wills made up that when one of us passes away, everything goes to the other one. And when that one passes away, there's quite a lot of charitable deals. We feel that our kids have, if they are getting along all right, they probably won't anyway. So whether we leave too much for them or not, it doesn't worry us any. And charity has been one of the things that I'm sure, and you've heard this many times, that whatever you do charitably will come back to you many times. I think it's true.
What sort of charities are you interested in and
Those are some
support?
secrets.
Not necessarily from any standpoint other than that's some insight into what you think is important.
Hungry people.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
Of course, we're interested in the church, but we don't go overboard in that everything should go to the church and that they should just build big castles or so forth. That hungry people are more important. And I don't mean hungry people that are hungry because they don't want to work. I mean hungry people that are really underprivileged.
Second part of the question then is that some projects or some goals or some principles take longer than one generation to accomplish. Was there anything started by your ancestors that you feel like you've furthered? And is there anything that you'd like to see us further that you have started that in the year 2000 you'd like to see some more progress being made toward that?
Well, I've thought about the possibility of this educational trust, that if it was turned into, what do I want to say, like the Space State Foundation is, what do they call that? You're familiar with it, Joe?
The foundation.
Yeah, foundation for probably some, so that everything would stay that is put in there. We might add to it under a case like that, and so that at some time in the future, just the income from it would be used or maybe a certain amount put back in to keep it from giving an inflation guard, and that the income from it could be used for really people in the family that are really needy in sickness or in something like that, and for other people that were hungry or in desperate needs. It's not really a fantasy with me, but I can see a possibility, and probably at the time that we set up the educational trust, we could have worked that in. Now it would be something that the benefactors of the trust would have to set up from that standpoint. If they did, I think probably we would contribute some more to it as a going thing for future times. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, first of all for the family, and then what more would you see that being used for?
Hungry people like we see in Mexico, and underprivileged people. I think that would probably come within a board of directors that would partially come from the family, plus maybe some others, and put to the best charitable use possible.
Mother, say what's on your face.
What's on my face? No, I was just thinking about the dream that we had was being able to give our kids an education, because in the day and age when we grew up, it was difficult to come by. And, it was a disappointment to me that I couldn't go on to school after I finished high school. But as the years went by, I felt like that I wasn't really prepared to go on to college, that what happened was a lot better for me, and that I struggled real hard to be a good mother and to protect and feed and clothe my kids the best I knew how, and give them a code that is love your God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. And I really wonder sometimes if in this day and age there's too much emphasis put on education per se. I think education takes in a lot more than studying books. And there's a lot of areas in life that need to be delved into. And I think with seeing especially the sisters that Sister Katrina is with, that Kathy's with, that there's so many more relationships that we can expand into and to give of ourselves to, regardless of whether we're well read, as you might say, or whether we know a lot about a lot of things. If you can just be a really loving person yourself that's bound to help other people wherever they are. And I don't think all the poor people are people that are destitute without money. I think there's a lot of poor people that have all the money that they need to get by with or throw it away. And they're still poor, because success to me isn't garnering possessions or money, but in living the life that is the most beneficial to yourself and whoever you meet. Like St. Francis. Does that say something to you? I don't know.
Yeah. Does that relate in any way to the foundation ideas that you'd like to add there?
No, I don't think that, other than taking care of the family that's close to me, I trust in the good Lord to make the world, if people will just cooperate, what He wants it to be when the time comes. And as I say, I was disappointed I didn't get to go on to school. Possibly if there'd been something that I could tap into, I could have gone on. But I'm not disappointed now that I didn't go on, and I think that because we were poor, it gave us a lot of gifts that we wouldn't have had if we had gone.
In my case, I never felt like I missed any. I went through the 8th grade and that was it. I never really felt that I missed all that much unless it was some fun deals, but as far as I think it done me a lot of good in this way that I knew I had to get out there and get the job done because I didn't have the education. And probably if I had gotten a lot of education, went through college in my case, I would have figured the world owed me because I had an education I knew I didn't have, and I knew I had to get in there and scoop beats and put in the hours and get the job done. And I worked at it that way. Good morning, young ones. Do you have any questions back there?
Well, I'll ask you something. I feel that you've really given us a lot of very special things. First, our faith, but a lot of other things. A love of learning, really. I don't know if you know that you did that, but you did. Love of music, love of nature. Are there any of those things that you think that we could do something more to add on to our children?
Oh, I just think that each one of you is just given more than that you got. I just am thrilled with the love that each one of our kids has for their kids and for one another. No disappointments there. No feeling of pushing anybody to do anything. Let them. I think that sometimes they all ought to relax a little bit and enjoy more, not struggle so hard, because I think the good Lord meant everybody to be happy in this world. He made a wonderful world for us to live in. Everything beautiful, as you say, the nature, the music, and the light and the dark and whatever, and that we just should appreciate it and enjoy it and just revel in the gift that nature is and the gift that humanity is to everyone.
Along those lines, I think one of the greatest things that you've endowed your children with to a greater degree than other parents may have done is a sense of self-confidence and a sense of being able to handle things and go out in the world and do their thing, whatever that thing may be. And the more I read and the more I see, the more I think that's very, very important, that confidence in yourself. How do you do that?
Sometimes a minute at a time.
And I think that I mentioned that in my case it was a determination.
You've managed to pass that on. Do you know how you've managed to do that?
By example, maybe, if there was an example.
Probably
Unconsciously.
the best example is the best teaching is example anyway. They say that kids learn from the way you act and not what you say. So here we are doing all this talking.
It's good to hear the talking because you have the words in your body.
I remember taking instructions from an Irish priest, Father Maloney, who was a missionary of this country. When he got all through with it, he said, I don't know how to say it, anyhow, faith, hope, and charity are the three most important things in the teaching. But he said, sometimes I think that perseverance is more important than the other three. So hang in there. probably the example was there in my family ahead of me. The pioneer thing was that you had to hang in there and you struggled and didn't give up. Waited sometimes with patience. Sometimes you have to wait for the Lord. You have to wait for history. You have to wait for time to make things right. Like the fruit is not fit to eat until it's ripe. So
Michael, you're sitting there like you wanted to ask something.
I just wanted to pick up on what you said about pioneers. I think that's one thing that's really clear to me, that all of us somewhere picked up that the thing to do is be pioneers. And if there's no more unexplored, no state that hasn't been pioneered, we go into other ways of pioneering. But I see every single one of us as really carrying that intense pioneering drive.
yeah, well, I think it's the individuality in everybody. Each person is different, and they have to live their life the way they are. So everybody has to be a pioneer in some ways, no matter where they are. You can't follow in somebody else's footsteps and be anything. You're just a shadow. You have to be a person. You have to pioneer.
Joel? You're gonna wish that you asked some questions if you had them on your mind, young ones. We might not be able to answer them, but we'll get around them somewhere or something.
Well, I'd like to know a little bit of how my mom was when she was little. I'd like to know a little bit about that.
Sometimes there are things that's better that you don't know. That was a wise crack, Joel. Joel, but I would say that she carried through this strong determination that I have been talking about of being successful and not letting the world get you down. She was very strong and carrying on and never being down. Nobody ever got her down.
We tried.
We tried.
Does that kind of answer your question, Joel? Huh?
Yeah, that'll answer my question. Thank
We
you.
didn't always love her for some of her ways, but she had a lot of good traits.
Well, she was a challenge to us, let us say that.
Yes.
Where did you get latched on to fishing? I mean, was it from your father or your mother, or how did you get started and feel like that was what you wanted to do a lot?
That's a peculiarity, Joel, about people. My father never did fish as far as I know. My brothers didn't fish when I was young, but some way, one of the pals that I ran around with, we just took to fishing. We used to fish the creeks around home. I don't know, I really can't answer you why.
Oh,
But
I can.
But it's just, hunting was the same thing. My dad didn't hunt hardly at all. My brothers didn't really, most of them care about hunting. But I was always in there hunting, trapping, fishing, taking abuse from the weather. I know that doesn't exactly answer what you're asking, but it's something that's in certain people that they just like to do. They love the outdoors, they love nature, and so forth.
The real answer is
Oh, yeah, the real answer is, he's talked about this determination, this striving so hard, this pushing. Okay, nobody can stand that without something to break that tension. I think that the fishing and the hunting, the outdoors, even the traveling up and down the highways is a release, an escape for Grandpa. And a coming back to bring balance into his life again. Something to make him whole. I don't understand all this new philosophy about holistic.
Fishing.
That's right.
Holistic.
Oh,
Jackson Hall.
Jackson Holistic Fishing. There's lots of recreation. It's interesting that he chose a gathering of food for his recreation.
does that go back to?
Feeding hungry people. Sure. I mean, he could have taken up bowling.
Right, not people.
But at the same time, he told me he couldn't hunt deer for very long, right? Had to end up with fish and ducks and geese.
How's that, Dan?
I don't know. I always felt like shooting a deer was like shooting a little milk cow. I don't know why, but I just couldn't stand it. There's something about looking at a deer that I just couldn't stand to shoot.
You get a great smile from Cassandra.
Mother, what would you say that your thing, the release from tension, the thing that you would say that you enjoyed most as a kind of a fun thing to get
Oh,
back in balance?
just sitting down and listening to music, or just sitting, resting, because and visiting with people about life and Bible study and things like this was a real treat for me. Talking. Playing with children. I, of course, started playing with babies from the time I was 2.5 years old.
It's still going on strong.
Lived in the same house with teenagers from the time I was a teenager until after Kathy was grown out of the teenagers, and she's only 25 now, so it's not been too long ago.
You want to go into picture taking, and if somebody thinks up something, we can back.
Randy's here.
Okay, let's, if there's anything in the next 5 or 6 minutes that anybody has, and then we'll shut off. I almost hate to go away from here because it's going so well. I hope it's coming out on tape.
Oh,
Anybody have anything more?
What are your goals in life now?
you got some more goals in life, Grandpa.
What are you going to be when you grow up?
Mommy.
I stole that from Joe.
Well, my goals in life are hoping that our family keeps on being a good family. As far as I don't intend and haven't just sit down and rot. I intend to keep working, maybe going down to the office every day, unless I go fishing or something, or traveling, but doing something all the time, not just sitting in this old chair and rotting, as I would call it, whatever, however you want to put that. That's really not much of a goal now, probably. But I'm interested in, I think the town, the city here has been good to me and to us. And I'm interested in the civic things and promotion and the growing of the country, in the valley. And also interested in politics, in that I would like to see the country get on a good, sound, solid basis. And I have to spout off to the congressmen and the senators and the governor and whoever it might be every once in a while about my theories, whether they're right or wrong. But I don't do it just to be doing something. I do it because it's a conviction that this or that is the right way to go and the right thing to do. That kind of answer here.
How about you, bro?
Oh, I feel like I've kind of done what I considered my duty, what I considered my life work, and then whatever is there for me to do from now on. Only thing is, I don't want to be rushed. I don't want to be pushed. I want to be able to take time to enjoy what I'm doing and to do it wholeheartedly and not feel like I'm doing as many things as I can with this. You know, as many things that I didn't get to do as well as I'd like to have done. Let me say, because I was always rushed or pushed or just couldn't put as much attention to that one particular thing as I'd like to. So this, from now on, I want to just do things the easy way, the fun way, the enjoyable way.
Oh.
I have to keep Grandpa happy, of course. That's been
That is a full-time job.
You make sure of that. Gotta keep her occupied.
he's my only responsibility now. The rest of you are on your own.
I have two things that I'd like to talk about. One, I'd like to talk a little bit about marriage. And after we're done talking about that, I'd like to talk a little bit about health. Want to start with that, with marriage? We've mentioned it, touched it a couple of times. Anything specifically?
Now you're getting ahead of yourself because Father wants us to say our vows again tonight.
Not again.
There you have it in a nutshell.
Well, how about health?
Gotta make sure about
I
these
think too
things.
that after 50 years, you should be free to do as you like. There should be some kind of regulation like that the Creator made. Of course, if they were, well, I'd probably go right back to her.
Oh, marriage is really it's a wonderful state. It's a beautiful state. It's a difficult state.
It's a little south of Nebraska, isn't it?
A little south of Nebraska. No, it's right here. Right here. It really takes three to make a marriage. It takes you and your spouse and the Lord in there helping you out through the adjustments and the cooperation and the sacrifices, because it takes sacrifice to live a good marriage. And it's also, there's a lot of rewards. I don't think we really realize the rewards until we see, after being there 50 years, and see what's here in front of us. That's one of the biggest rewards that there is, to see young people grow up, see babies grow, and see them grow up and go out on their own and live good lives and live the kind of way that is constructive and beautiful and loving and gentle, strong, whatever. All of the words are not there. The extremes in anything are all involved in there.
I think it's really beautiful that some of the things that we didn't have to put up with is we never had to bail our kids out of jail or find them selling drugs and so forth. That I think we really lucked. I think we're really proud of you for that. Maybe there were times when you think you should have got in trouble.
Well,
But most people in the world have sometime or another.
the negative things. There were so many positive things, the things they did for other people. The charity you talked about, the teaching and the medical work that Ann did, charity work that Margie did, Phyllis did, Mary Louise, or Joe. One of the joys was being able to call on Joe when Grandpa had surgery done in Mexico and I was lost and say, Joe, come get us. And there he was. And Alan, his courage and walking the long ways that he's gone to in the taking of the family and giving them everything he's got, trusting in the Lord to fill up the spaces that humanly you just can't handle everything. All of it.
You're both pretty healthy individuals. Dad, you're going on 79, huh?
So,
And seeing you out paddling the canoe yesterday, and seeing you hauling the fish at Yellowstone, and some of the other things that you do. Any things that's been important there for you that might be important to?
of course, that has always been something that your mother and I disagreed on a lot of things, health and so forth. And I have visited with some of the grandchildren about, and of course, a lot of things connected to health. But I do try to exercise every morning, which I feel limbers you up some. I always try to get exercise. Try to not overeat, but that doesn't always work out. Certainly never overdrink. And while probably I smoked too much at one time, when I saw that it wasn't doing me any good, I just quit it, got out of it. For what good, the good, I take eye exercises every morning. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I don't wear glasses yet, except for reading. I have told some of the grandkids that I brush my teeth with toothpaste once a day only, which comes from an old dentist friend, that you wore the enamel off your teeth, and in old age you had no teeth. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but I still am enjoying my own teeth. Years ago, I got in the belief through things that I read and so forth, that if you washed your hair every day, you were heading for baldness, because you took all the natural things out of your hair. Sure, you should wash it when it gets dirty, but not every day or every 2 days. Maybe whether that was right or wrong, I have kept pretty good hair, although it's kind of receding on the front and all that, but it's kept in pretty fair shape. As far as my hearing is concerned, I've never done anything to keep it good, and well, your mother and grandmother don't think that I hear very well. I think my hearing is still pretty good considering everything. But I think a lot of people abuse their bodies by not exercising and so forth, staying up too late, nights, not getting a reasonable amount of sleep.
Tell them when you go to bed. Tell them how many naps you take.
But that hasn't been true all my life.
No.
Just true lately. Sometimes I do take a nap in the middle of the day. Sometimes I don't. But I do have, if I go to bed reasonably early, I get a good night's sleep. If I stay up too late ordinarily, then I can't fall asleep. I don't know why.
No, well, I don't think you ever went without a lot of sleep. Except during the war. And then he was awful hard to live with when he didn't sleep. But that was, sometimes you make a sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. There were times when he was down at that shop 21, 22 hours a day,
Camping tires.
trying to keep transportation going in the country when they couldn't get rubber. That has something to do with Joel's question about Phyllis. Because that was when she was a tiny little thing. The kind of a daddy and mama she had to live with because of the upset in the world at that time.
Anything else hot on somebody's mind?
Well, Mom hasn't really said much about health yet now. Other than that, Daddy said that they didn't agree. So,
I might add to that before we were married, that her mother told me that if it was anybody else but me, because of her very, very poor health, she wouldn't let her get married. Personally, I think she was pretty healthy. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I've tried to do what I knew to live a good, healthy life. I think your genes have a lot to do with your health and strength, and I especially feel that way now. Not only the genes, but things that happen to you. Sister Katrina is perfectly healthy, and yet she has this very difficult medical problem. And so there are some things that haven't anything to do with what you do and what you don't do. You have to live with whatever kind of thing is there. I was really lucky when he said that when he grew up and when I grew up, you didn't use doctors. That was in an age when you didn't. In fact, our oldest daughter was born at home. I didn't even go to the hospital for that. And then it became the custom to do it afterwards. But I always felt like the fact that all my children brought me more health because of the fact that I had a lot of medical care all through the pregnancies and afterwards, and learned most of the things that I know that's good for you through just the contact with the doctors that I had. Just had a wonderful family doctor here that delivered the first 6 babies and took care of all of them all through those years. So we were fortunate that we had access to those kind of things and that Daddy could pay for it.
Good. Anything you'd like to say for, in summary of this session anyway? There's that last comment brought up 3 more things that I want to ask.
You can get too talking.
I think he's waiting.
But yeah, we should get that taken care of. So if you'd like to say anything to close this session anyway, feel free.
We love you all. We greatly appreciate you turning out for this event. Thank you for it. We think you're beautiful people. We're proud of you.
Is there something we can